Welcome into another edition of Trust the Process Live. We're not really live, and we did not come to you last week because of some quote-unquote technical difficulties. That's the jargon in the industry, if you know what I mean. I'm your host, James Hyden. I got Mr. Five Digits with me, Maximilian Coolish, and the second most famous YG, young gentleman, James Jackson himself.
Great to
How
see
are
you.
you doing this week?
You know what?
I'm good. Hair's
I'm
long.
use it again, Banners. Surviving.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, you can use it as much as you want, pal. That's fine.
Yeah, Coolest. I saw that dude, man. That's wild up there. Why do you think I got a hat on?
I couldn't do it this week. I'm getting like scareder by the week of what exactly my barber is gonna look like when all this is over. You know what I mean? Because it's gonna be at least. Oh, Max, my man, that's something else right there, brother.
Crazy. It's crucial times out here, man.
It is. Gentlemen, before we get into it, we got to mention, James, I know you said something in the group chat earlier. We got to give prayers up to Monty G out there a couple weeks before all of this COVID-19 hit us, kind of really changed our lives. We were graced with the presence of Philadelphia superfan, number one superfan, Monty G at Mirage Lounge down in Old City. I've never felt an energy quite like that, man. Seriously, the guy came in, the nicest person you never want to meet. Immediately picked up what we were doing, had fun with it, had a great time. Let us know that he had a great time, and I think that was the most special part to me about him telling us how much he enjoyed it. You know what I mean? So we're gonna drop a link in the show description. For you guys to reach out and help Monty G any way that we can. He was actually put on a respirator and in a medically induced coma due to COVID-19 related complications. So any way that we can help out, because Monty has helped out this city in so many different ways, we need to do our part. Just as many causes that we've brought to light on this show, Monty is especially in our hearts right now and our thoughts. So with that being said, please click on that link, do anything you can, but we're going to move right into it. Gentlemen, we got to talk a little bit of sports, a little bit of Philadelphia sports today. That's what we're here for. And we're going to start off with my personal favorite, some baseball. James, I know you'd rather talk about anything. Oh, maybe not hockey, but anything else.
I'm okay with baseball. As long as it's not hockey, man, I'm good with baseball. Let's do it.
Cool. So I'm going to ask you guys the question. I'm going to ask you guys the question, Max. I'm going to go to you first. Does the MLB season being delayed, does it help or hurt the Phillies, the new look Phillies?
I think there's obviously the benefit of time for every team, right? That's constant from team 1 to team 30 on the list, right? Everyone's going to have more time, whether that be to heal up, to get acclimated to a new city, whatever it might be, right? In the Phillies case specifically, I actually think this doesn't help them, right? Because last year, their big issue wasn't talent so much. It was maybe not the talent not performing at the levels we were hoping, but ultimately a lot of it came down to actual management of games, the manager's decisions pre-game, during games. A lot of that came into question at various points throughout the season, right? So in my mind, the only thing I want to see is an improvement on that front, because to me, if the players come out and do what they did at the same level they did last year, an improvement in management and putting them in better positions to succeed from the jump is going to increase their productivity naturally. So for me, I want to be able to have Girardi get in there, see what works, see what doesn't, see what they need to figure out in terms of batting orders, pitching, who their bullpen guys are, at what times. I want those things to get ironed out, and that takes about 30 games or so, right? If the MLB has a shortened season, or if anything along those lines happens, if they end up playing the full season, this doesn't matter so much. But if the season gets condensed in any way, shape, or form, teams that are going to suffer the most are teams with new managers, the Phillies being one of them, and that's why I actually think, this could have a lot of negatives to it, should this kind of drag out.
I hear what you're saying, Max, and a lot of it makes sense. I mean, 99% of it makes sense. They did have a little bit of a spring training, so we did get, I think it was maybe 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, a handful.
I know there was only maybe about one where the full lineup was presented for the Phillies of what they actually would want to roll out towards
opening day. And
Bryce
Harper was scalding hot.
Yeah, and Bryce was absolutely on a tear. Had multiple two home run games in spring training, right?
Oh yeah.
Had multiple
shots.
On a tear. So from that point of view, from that point you made, Joe Girardi has at least a little bit of an idea of the product that he's going to be able to roll out there on the field, minus the injured guys. And I think that's one of the biggest pluses that this little break has to get to, my actual answer of yes, is they have that allotted time, not only to figure out what they have from an organizational standpoint for a couple key guys to continue to get healthy. It was looking like McCutcheon was going to miss, a significant part of the year with that ACL tear. You move that back and back and back, and now this is just more time Kutch has to spend with the Phillies instead of spending it on the sideline. That's very important for them. Guys like David Robertson, who maybe didn't look like he was going to be able to play this year much or this year at all, might have a glimmer of hope to get in if the season gets pushed back. So, they're going to benefit from that standpoint. And when you have such a change as the Phillies just did in management, it's not just changing a manager. You have managers who have absolutely opposite styles of managing baseball, who have cleaned house and brought in their own staff. Now we don't have to try to figure things out with real time. We're almost playing with house money a little bit as they get to figure things out from organizational standpoint on borrowed time, on time that's not going to affect anybody on the field. So hopefully when they can get to their players, their facilities, and hit the diamond, we're hitting it from the ground running and not using a little bit of time to get acclimated.
One thing real quick that actually neither of us mentioned, you kind of mentioned it with Robertson. I think this helps the bullpen so much because the rehab process for pitchers is so weird because it's such a, it's very delicate in a way. It's the same muscle being expanded and extenuated on continuously. So I really loved. I did overthink that, and I do think maybe the Phillies will benefit from the injury time off maybe more than actually a lot of
injury is the biggest part of it. Like, you have a valid point with saying, at some point I need to see my guys on the field before I know exactly which adjustments to make. And there's still some position disputes, right? We still don't know, who exactly is going to play third base or second base between Gene and Scott. We don't know exactly what we want to do with Roman Quinn. I think a lot of those answers have to get answered based on performance and being on the field. So from that standpoint, it hurts, but I think there's at least more good than bad right now with the season being delayed. Not by much, though. Like, I'm not – in June, my answer will be very different. Like, if we're still not playing baseball deep in the summer, my answer will be very different.
So, Max, your point about the bullpen actually sparked an interesting thought in my mind. I think I agree with you. It hurts. My reasons for it hurting is a little bit different. I'm absolutely terrified of free agency, but I'll come back to that. This really hurts because Seranthony Dominguez has already showed that he doesn't want Tommy John surgery at all. He doesn't want it. I don't know why. I don't know why he didn't just get the surgery last season. It brings into that whole argument with Deshaun Jackson last season. Why didn't he get the surgery so he can come back? It seems to be that weird groupthink of like half of the professional leagues. Some will obviously opt for the surgery right away. Others will rehab and take like the third or fourth opinion, which, like, to me, I don't understand why you're listening to an opinion that's like you get 3 or 4 stops down the road. That to me means you're looking for an answer and you're just waiting for people to tell you what you want to hear.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is not the right way to go at all. But I digress about that. I just think Seranthony's going to make the wrong decision, and we're not going to get a season of Dominguez or Robertson, which is going to really hurt this bullpen.
What we got last year.
I know.
That's exactly what we got last year.
I know. That kind of leads me to my bigger point, though, is I'm absolutely terrified of this free agency. As the days go past, we get closer to JT Realmuto being able to be offered crazy contracts by other teams. Giving away Alfaro and Sixto Sanchez. Alfaro is already an average to above average starter in this league at a premium position. Catcher is probably the most premium position on the diamond if you can play it well. So giving that up, as well as a guy who can literally locate 3 pitches at 90 miles per hour plus in Sixto Sanchez, is a little bit worrying. If we don't re-sign JT, which is he's the best all-around catcher in baseball. Anybody who says different clearly doesn't watch the Phillies. And then another reason free agency is scary is because we only have Didi Gregorius for 1 year. You know what I mean? So what are we doing? Some people could argue that's good in terms of if you don't get to see Didi play, that's fine. That's one less position battle you have to worry about. But me personally, I wanted to see a shortstop hit 27 home runs in Citizens Bank Park. That's
me too.
Whatever it is.
100%.
That's.
I do think you're being a little pessimistic about the JT situation. Maybe for good measure, but I don't think we should expect for him to walk at the end of the season. Yes, teams are going to offer him money, but he's already made it very clear that he loves playing baseball in Philly. He wants to resign here, and the good thing is the Phillies want to make that happen as well. So I'm optimistic that, somewhere, they can meet in the middle somewhere because the want is there. Didi is different. Didi was signed this year because this year was a championship run.
You're right.
The Didi was more of a rental of, let me get one great year out of Didi. If it works and he wants to continue, cool. If it doesn't, I'm not too attached to him and he can move on. So I would hate to not get my value for Didi for that 1 year. But the JT situation, I'm not off the rails on it just yet.
You're completely right. And it's worth noting that Bryce Harper he's been the one championing getting JT re-signed. If you watch all these highlights that are being pushed out by NBC Philadelphia, Bryce and JT are always the ones that share a big hug whenever Bryce hits a walk-off or everything like that. So I'm not anticipating him leaving. The thought of it scares me to death.
I'm with you. I do know where you're coming from.
Yeah,
you don't like the possibility being there, because the longer that it hangs around, the more possible that it becomes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So all this talk of Bryce Harper and having what some would say is a down year, I don't subscribe to that. I think it was a great first year in Philadelphia, all things considered. The talk about Bryce Harper and how he did last year leads us into our next question in who does the Phillies' success rely on? You know what I mean? Because a lot of people will tell you a bunch of different answers. JJ, who are the Phillies relying on to succeed?
That guy right there. 13 years, $330 million, and he's got his transition year under his belt. And I think that's why, James, it wasn't a down year for Bryce Harper. You have to give a little bit of a gray area for a guy coming onto a team and taking the weight of the franchise onto his shoulders and knowing that this isn't the year that we're making our championship run. We had a good roster and we had a chance to do something, but I think everyone in Philadelphia knew that wasn't the all-in season to go win a World Series. We knew it wasn't going to be that. But now that is out of the way, Bryce, you are acclimated to this city. You have the fans behind you. You are, no doubt, the face of this team now. You've earned that. So now it's time to go step up and go back to that MVP Bryce Harper that we all know that you can be, and drive this team home and will this team to a championship. One of the biggest cliches in sports, and it's there for a reason, is you go as your best player goes. And Bryce Harper is our best player right now. And if we're going to have any shot at any long-term success, any great success this season, I just think we're reliant on a guy who has seen prove that he can handle the weight of a franchise on his shoulders and wants that. So since he wants it, I'm going to give it to him. It's on you, Bryce. We wait.
Yeah.
All right. And honestly, I think so. I'm not going to go with Bryce Harper. And honestly, the main reason that I'm not is you touched on it. It wasn't a down year for him. You know what it was a down year for? It was a down year for the guy who's in the uniform but not touching the field ever. It was a down year for the managers in Philadelphia last year. The coaching staff let that team down. The players carried them through performance to an 81 victory. I'll say this about Kapler. He got out of every 10 decisions he made, he got 8 wrong, and the other 2 somehow he struck gold on, right? And weird things like that every now and then stole them wins as well. But as a body of consistency, it wasn't there. So I talked about this earlier. I'm looking for Girardi to be that guy who's going to come in with his military sunglasses on and tell everybody to drop and give him 25 on day one. He's going to lock and tighten that place up, and that is going to make them a more disciplined team. They played very undisciplined. Even if you watch Bryce last year, when he was going through slumps, he was swinging for the parking lots on swings because he felt like he had to produce something every single time he hit the plate. And some of that was players not performing well, like everyone, Hoskins, Segura, JT not so much, but basically everyone had points where they were slumping at points in the season, even Bryce. But one thing that was consistent is that the manager last year kept banging his head against the wall, trying to get square pegs to fit in round holes or vice versa. A lot of the things that he was trying just weren't working, and he was like, it would maybe just be those extra 1 or 2 games, giving things a try when they weren't working. That cost you games, and ultimately that's what cost you playoff spots and standings. So I'm going to say this. If Joe Girardi is what's advertised, what we all think he is, what we've seen him do with the Yankees, and just throughout his career in general, the guy has 20-plus years of managerial experience. He's going to come in there and make them a better team, because I don't want to sound like I'm the fact I'm not crapping on Gabe Kapler by saying this, but Girardi's a smarter manager than he is. He has much more experience. Being able to share that experience with a team that talented is going to pay off. It's going to pay off in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, I want it to be a ring this year. I'm not going to say it's going to be, but I think there's no doubt that the Phillies are going to be, a better team top to bottom.
That's not crapping on Gabe Kapler. That's just calling a spade at this point. That's
so Max did not like the valiant effort out of our coconut oiled manager last year. Since he decided he needed to read a dictionary every night before he goes to sleep and use some other outworldly term to describe his players.
He tried, man. Gabe tried. It wasn't for a lack of effort. He tried.
I'll give him that. You can't take that away.
What really pissed me off is he went to San Francisco, which, by the way, good luck to the Giants with that, because that's just hilarious.
They flipped their whole mindset on its head too. You going from Bochy to Kapler, that's
literally
crazy change.
Literally blows my mind. Yeah. But good luck with that. And he threw like backhanded compliments, or backhanded insults, like Markelle Fultz did to the Sixers. He did that about the Phillies, and that was just like that. That boiled my blood. But I digress.
We get 2 series with the Giants each year. We'll see that, man. We'll see that, man.
We'll see you in San Francisco, Gabe.
Yeah, we'll see that, man.
My answer is going to be Rhys Hoskins, simply because the man literally slumped for the entire year, it seemed like, outside of the first 2 months of the season. If you guys will think back to literally the best Phillies teams that probably this organization has ever seen outside of like 79, 80, 81, Ryan Howard was the Bryce Harper. You know what I mean? The guy who's going to absolutely crush a baseball. But those teams protected Ryan Howard. And when I say protected, I don't mean anything off the field. I mean protected in the batting order. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So Rhys has to be – I'm sorry. So Bryce has to be protected. You know what I mean? So he can't just go up there and not – he exactly what Max said. He can't just be swinging for the fences every time because he feels like he needs to – literally be the heart and soul of this lineup. He needs to have somebody behind him. Ryan Howard always had Chase Utley before him and Pat Burrell after him. That means you can't get away with with literally just walking this guy. You can't take the Barry Bonds effect and saying, oh, what happens? You walk him. You can't, because you have Chase Utley before him and Pat Burrell behind him. So now you need to have Bryce Harper protected by having Gene Segura or Didi or Scott before him and Rhys Hoskins after him. So to me, Rhys is going to really drive this season, because Bryce showed and Mike Trout has showed baseball is not a sport where one person can carry this team to a championship. And it's, as much as I love Mike Trout, baseball is just not that kind of sport.
It's the least sport where one person. Mike Trout has been undoubtedly the best player in baseball for 4 or 5 years now, and his team has been abysmal.
It's quite disheartening, because literally the Millville Missile. So Philadelphia, he's at all the Eagles games. Philadelphia loves him. It sucks, but kind of is what it is. Guys, we're going to pivot to another one of these sports that got affected by COVID-19. The Sixers were in a precarious place, to say the least, in the Eastern Conference standings and the overall kind of image of the league. What I personally, I've been playing a little bit of NBA Jam, and that kind of leads into our question. You all know how this goes. NBA Jam, you pick the 2 superstars, 2 best players from teams, and you play. So where do you guys rank this NBA Jam team of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid amongst the league 1 and 2s?
I'm going to go, I guess, surprisingly optimistic. A lot of our fans are going to be surprised to hear me say this. I'll put them top 5. They're 5. Like, I mean, they're probably interchangeable with duos. Yeah, I'll put them top 5. I mean, there's many reasons. I mean, they're interchangeable to me with duos like Harden and Russ, Damon, CJ. They're in that tier. They're in that, can be interchanged between like 5, 6, and 7. But I'm going to give them top 5. They also have time side. They're both 25 and under, 24 and under. There's a lot of upside and a lot of time to be had. That goes with you. But with that being said, they are 5 by a very thin like a thread. They're holding on by 1, and they could easily get bumped to that 6, 7, ladder 10 range if they're not careful. And if the season were to continue, they were very much in jeopardy of that. There's no doubt in my mind that both of them have the chance to be maybe the best player at their position in the NBA, and there's a couple things holding them back from it. But in terms of where I would put them right now, I mean, look, they're two 24 and 25-year-old superstars in the NBA, and one of the very few teams in the league that can say they've sent two all-stars and one of them were a starter. So from that standpoint, they're going to have to be a top 5 duo, but it's very thin ice for them.
Okay, that's fair. I don't have a full list in front of me or anything. Just off gut, I probably have them like 8th, maybe, just off.
Wow.
Just off kind of what's going on up here right now.
Right.
And the way my thought process is going is kind of like for example, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, like they've been a duo longer than the two of them have. They have had more playoff success as a whole. Yeah.
Have they? I mean, barely. They went to one more round, but I mean, Dame was getting knocked out the playoffs with CJ for years.
I know. I mean, the Sixers have two second round knockouts. Like, see, for me, I give the edge to someone like Dame and McCollum because of the longevity. Like yeah, the results are similar, but they've been getting those results for 4 extra years. They've proven themselves as a duo.
I would go against them if I'm getting to the same point, hitting the same wall each year. Now imagine, Max, 4 or 5 goes down the road, and we look back, and it's not 2 first-round exits, it's 5 or 2 second-round exits, it's 5 second-round exits in a row. That goes against.
Yeah, I'm not saying in terms of like disappointment or anything. Like there's obviously much more into going that goes into winning series than just the play of 2 players. And I think that's a very valid point, but just for me personally, it's like you kind of have to find that balance of what they've achieved together versus potential versus, you know what I mean? Versus how old are they versus, how long have they been playing together? Like Russ and James Harden. James Harden is definitely a better player in terms of the NBA hierarchy than Embiid and Ben Simmons probably. Russ, Simmons and Embiid are generally, in my eyes, probably viewed by most
around the same,
same tier generally. Yeah. Right, so it's like Russ and Harden have been together for 55 games. They're probably better players individually as a duo than Embiid and Simmons, but are they a better duo than Embiid and Simmons because they haven't done anything together? So you know what I mean. So that's just kind of my thought process behind it. I even guys like Kawhi and Paul George haven't done anything together, but how am I going to put Simmons and Embiid over the two of them as a duo? You know what I mean? So it's tough. Just off the top of my head, I'm going to call them on the lower end of the top 10.
So I'm not saying Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid wouldn't be like a top 3 pick for me in NBA Jam teams. But that's a video game. This is real life. Would you guys, what would you guys say to me if I told you they're not really a duo?
I would ask you to define duo then, because
I would too.
The Sixers clearly have a 2-crown system, and they're it.
To me, it doesn't really seem like they're a duo because both of them play better when the former isn't on the court.
Okay.
Fair point.
There's been how many articles about what lineups they should use to maximize Ben Simmons' strengths versus what lineups they should use to maximize Joel's strengths. Is there any school of thoughts about that with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard or Anthony Davis and LeBron or CJ McCollum?
Russ and James Harden, yes. Russ and James Harden are the only other.
That's a point where I disagree with you. I would say Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are head and shoulders above Russ because Russ is literally just he's an Energizer bunny who's a volume shooter who misses everything he takes pretty much. Granted, I'm not discrediting anything that Russ has done. Averaging a triple-double in a season is a feat in and of itself. But again, I've also seen those highlights where people are clearly boxing out and letting him get rebounds on free throw attempts just to pad those stats. So I put Ben and Joel a little bit ahead of Russ. That's not to say that James Harden, like you said, is not clearly above them because of what he has done in this league. CJ, for instance, CJ and Dame, as much as they might not hang out on and off the court, they seem like they at least acknowledge that it's a business decision and they need to know how to get along in personal life and on the court.
Yeah.
Ben and Joel don't seem like they like each other. And to that point, it's a big thing in Philadelphia whenever we get a new Twitter video of these guys showing any kind of emotion towards each other. Like these guys smiling and laughing and like acting like they're friends is a big thing to us. Why, like that in and of itself seems very weird to me.
Okay. You know? Yeah, that's fair. I guess I don't like to think about that as a Sixers fan, but yeah, no, I guess as, you know, if you're looking at it neutrally, like, you know, or anyway, that's, you know, you don't want the friction there between your two star players, Shaq and Kobe.
Right.
No, Shaq and Kobe had friction. They won rings together. They were unstoppable. If they got over their personal issues, who knows how many titles the Lakers could have won in that stretch.
Exactly. So for me, it's a little bit weird. I desperately, I literally have a Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons jersey. I want these two to work, just like you said, like Max, like the enormous amount of potential that these two both have. I want this thing to work desperately because I love both these guys individually. It's just, to me, I can't call them a duo right now. As much as I would pick them to play an NBA Jam, because that'd be hilariously fun to just dunk on everybody and run up and down the court.
Yeah, but you can't win an NBA Jam without shooting, man. You cannot win an NBA Jam game without shooting.
I'll school you as the Hawks, the old school Hawks, man.
Yeah, but you got to, because you can't. Ben Simmons is probably tragic at NBA Jam. I'm just gonna say that straight up. Like
you might not be wrong. You might not be wrong. The Sixers, it's gonna be a weird time. The Sixers like to refer to the process and having a treasure trove of draft assets. It's going to be really weird to see who they bring in, what kind of player they bring in, especially with all these rumors about Elton Brand being kind of pulled away for the Knicks job and getting offered. It's going to be interesting to see how they continue to build this team around their two future superstars. But that talk kind of leads us into this next question. And you guys can tell I was searching for a little bit of a segue there because that was really rough.
Yeah, you did it right. You did a good job.
But
I had to check where we were.
Exactly. No, you can tell I was fishing there a little bit. But what I'm reeling in is this next question about the Eagles draft. So they're picking at 21. It's going to be a little bit interesting to see because of all these different rumors about teams trading up, teams trading down, and who actually people want to target. So the Eagles very clearly want to target a number one receiver. It's going to be weird to see if they either trade up or stay pat at 21 because it's probably the deepest wide receiver class since the infamous 96 wide receiver draft class. If CeeDee Lamb is the target for the Eagles actually, do they go up and get him, or do they stand pat at 21 and just see who's there? Like what's the backup plan if they don't trade up and CeeDee Lamb doesn't fall to them?
To me,
CeeDee Lamb is definitely not falling to them.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, right? You can hold out a little hope for it. I think you're right, Max. I mean, but to that same point, just because he's probably not going to fall there doesn't mean he's not the target for the Eagles. Like I think he's still the target for the Eagles in the draft. Back to your point, James, is whether they have to move up and get him and make that happen is different. But I think the backup plan is simple. I think if you go to target CeeDee Lamb wherever way, if you think he's going to fall, or you go up and get him and he's still not there, and you have to go to backup plan, I think then you look at your two biggest needs, wide receiver and linebacker. Then you look at the board and you say, whichever position has the better player, has the best prospect at that position, I go and get. Now, if, I stay in pat at 21 and wide receivers are going off the board, but I'm looking at the linebacker position and, I'm still seeing, names like Kenneth Murray and Isaac Queen, and I'm still seeing these guys, and I go and get one. But I make sure that I get the best linebacker possible. And then hopefully when I come back in the second round, I can start to make up for the wide receiver position in the draft. But I'm not going to swing and miss on both. Like I think if, your number one target is there, then it's time to go back to the drawing board, see what I need. And if my number two need has the best prospects still on the board, I might have to go fill my number two need now.
Max?
All right. I mean, that's fair. It's I'm certainly not going to knock the Eagles if they don't aggressively look to trade up. But I will say this. I have been on multiple records saying that I am all in on going up for CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. You guys know that I want them to make this move. I'll say this. I think the best way you got to approach this is realistically 49ers at 13 are probably your best bet in terms of finding a trade partner who is willing to deal with you and definitely doesn't need the position in question, right? Very unlikely the Niners are going to go for one of these receivers. They have made it known they've made it known that they need picks. They don't have any picks. They have no picks after their 2 first-round picks. They don't have a pick again until I think the 5th round. So they're looking for some mid-round picks. The only thing is you have to have an offer in mind, because chances are the 49ers are going to be selling that pick to a lot of teams. So you got to know what your offer is. You got to say, look, this is the best offer I'm giving you for pick 13. Maybe we can tweak it a little bit in the heat of the moment when other people start adding on to their offers. But this is as much as I'm going. I'm not trading up more than this to get to 13, right? If it doesn't happen like that, if those demands aren't met, then you stay there. And I absolutely think that what JJ said, you're 100% correct. You stand put at 21. If you can't find that right trade for you, don't reach too hard, because this is that deep of a draft class. If this was top, 2-man heavy top, I would say, maybe throw in an extra pick that you need to. But this is a deeper class. Don't throw away picks that you don't need to, especially to a good team that you're competing for a Super Bowl berth against. Chances are, if you want to get to the Super Bowl in the NFC, good chance you're going to run into the 49ers after what they showed us last year. So I think that you got to have a nice plan in mind. If your goal is to go get one of those 2 big receivers, which Howie was on like an Eagles, like a team-made content thing, saying that he wanted to be aggressive and looking up and was going to look at wide receivers in the draft, kind of made it, little nudge in the ribs of the fan base. I think if that happens, then yes, you go for it. If not, stand pat, take a receiver that you like, or if you find one of the better linebackers still available, maybe trade up a spot or 2, if you really think that it's necessary to get one of those top couple guys.
And real quick, right before we move on, to your point, Max, I mean, I think if you're worried about the Eagles, not reaching too far and not, and pulling off a trade that isn't really in their best interest, then Howie's your guy, because we've seen that Howie will be patient. Like Howie showed.
I always can trust. I always know that Howie will not
be patient. Howie showed in this free agency, just this past free agency is all the sample size you need. That I'm not going to jump unless I can land on a nice. I will not drown trying to just make something happen. So, I think if that's what you're worried about, Howie Roseman's the GM for you.
Real quick, just want to say this. Marquise Lee cut by the Jaguars today. Why not?
James,
what else better on your roster?
I got to agree with you, man.
Gives you a 3rd-round pick you get to spend on a linebacker or something instead of another receiver.
I'll echo James's sentiments, though. I really think you got to target linebacker in round 1. As weird as that is to say, man.
I don't think you're wrong.
A lot of teams are undervaluing linebackers, and I truly don't understand why. This may be the linebacker in high school coming out in me, but what?
No bias.
I might be, but what franchise linebacker have the Eagles had since Jeremiah Trotter? Max?
None.
That to me blows my mind. I really don't understand it. So if golly, what's his name from Oklahoma?
Kenneth Murray. Kenneth Murray's there.
Murray's still there at 21, or Patrick Queen. Both of these guys are absolute studs. They can cover.
I agree.
They can rush.
I agree. I love. Dude, if Murray's there at 17, 18, dude, throw a 3rd-round pick to go get that guy. He might be like Derwin James, where it's damn, how did this guy last until the late teens?
Right. I know. And James, if I'll throw this name out there. If they can come in and be your Devin White, what are we? Or Devin?
Let me tell you, if y'all get a Devin White, hold on to him. Devin White is stud. If there's a Devin White in this draft, go get him. He's a stud.
The Steelers moved up for Devin Bush last year, and that paid off. Literally unseen dividends. You know what I mean? You get a good inside linebacker who can read the field, call the defense. It's invaluable. It really is. I don't understand it. And plus, I don't trust the Eagles developmental staff. You know what I mean? The all of these scouts are raving about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside last year, moving up and he moved up to a second round draft pick. Why not just grab 2 or 3 wide receivers in the later rounds, see if we can develop them? That's fine. Go out and spend the money that you're going to have when a couple of these contracts run out and get a bona fide number 1 in the upcoming years in free agency. You don't have to worry about screwing up any of this development. That's just how I would lean personally. Get the depth, get a couple of these positions filled, so you have 2 or 3 guys coming out of the draft that can go in there with Greg Ward and compete for actually being Carson Wentz's favorite target. That's
favorite target.
Ertz is obviously his favorite target. But I've seen a bunch of Eagles fans advocating that you trade Ertz for value.
My roommate's one of those guys. Can't agree with it. That's a whole other conversation. Well, maybe we'll do that next week.
That's actually interesting. Whether you would trade Ertz or Goddard, so that's a whole nother rabbit hole that I won't drag you down.
Maybe that's an easy question if you don't trade Ertz.
It could be interesting. We'll get back to that next week. But a question that this is. I love this question, and I really want to see where you guys go. I know the viewing audience is going to have a bunch of good responses to this as well. It comes from The Last Dance, which, as everybody knows, premiered last night on ESPN. The documentary about the last year of the Bulls dynasty, and kind of while watching that, there were so many teams that Michael Jordan did just flat out denied. In pre-pro, we talked about these Indiana teams, the Cleveland teams, that literally nobody knows some of these players just because of how bright the star of Michael Jordan was burning. And it's kind of a tragedy because some of these players are all-time greats. So the question that was come up with was, what's the best team that Jordan held back? You know what I mean? Who was the best player or team that just got literally denied? You know what I mean? Just because of who Jordan was. James, you start.
To me, there is one person in particular that his career and legacy suffered so many hits because of Michael Jordan, and that's Patrick Ewing of the New York Knicks. Wow. Like, I think Michael Jordan stopped Patrick Ewing from being with Kareem as the best center of all time. That's how good.
And coming from college too, in that national championship, like
both of them. Like he got his heart ripped out by Jordan year after year after year, and it started in college where Jordan, cemented his clutchness by hitting, the game-winning shot. And what was it, the '82 national championship?
Yeah.
Against Patrick Ewing?
Or it might have been 81 because that was his freshman year.
Yeah, 81-82.
81-82. So Patrick Ewing got victimized by Jordan personally year after year. There's only one time where Patrick Ewing beat the Bulls in the playoffs, and that was a 7-game series in which Michael Jordan wasn't even there. Michael Jordan was playing baseball, and it still took him 7 games to beat the Chicago Bulls with just Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman. And when Michael Jordan was there, he just did not have success. Granted, he was one of the 10 teams to beat the '96 Bulls when they broke the NBA record at the time for best regular season record, but that's regular season. When it comes to playoffs and trophies and anything after that, Patrick Ewing hit a brick wall, and that brick wall's name was Michael Jordan every single time. And you truly remove Michael Jordan from that equation, and I truly believe that we're talking about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaq, and Patrick Ewing simultaneously as the best centers of all time. Because of Michael Jordan, you put Patrick Ewing in tier number 2, and that sucks for him because it was one person that kept him from being, on that tier 1 with Shaq and Kareem for centers.
Max?
So I'm going to say this. I think in terms of individual players, you can make the case for a lot of them. But in terms, for me, I thought more so of teams. The Jazz in the mid to late 90s were, by all accounts, probably would have been easily the best team in the league, like most other years. Hell, even better than the Bulls, or even, some people even consider them better than the Bulls, regular season wise for, 97 and 98. Karl Malone won MVP in 97. The Jazz were insanely good. One of the best coaches in the league, 2 of the best players in the league, best scorer in the league, best assister in the league. And all of it was just washed. Well, second best scorer in the league because Michael Jordan was the best scorer in the league. And all of it just got done away by Michael Jordan. Those series were probably as close as they could have got. And the fact that they caught the Bulls on the very end of that run and they still couldn't get over those humps. Either one of those years, they played them both years. Like, you know what I mean? Think about how prime it is, right? 98, 99, or the last year the Bulls win the title. You rematch the team that you just beat in the finals the previous year. The Bulls have 5 rings already. The Jazz just got beat by them the year before, and the Bulls are still hungry enough to go out there and beat them 4-2 in the series. To me, that is so nuts. Like, if you were through 5 championship runs in 7 years, and Michael Jordan had a year and a half off because of baseball or whatever, still, it is so. Look at the Warriors this past year. Your it's so hard for a body to handle that. Like, and I get that the Warriors have been doing it more consecutive years because of the break. But to me, those Jazz teams it's just insane that they never ended up winning a title because they're widely considered one of the best teams of all time.
And here's my argument to you, Max. You said they got beat by Jordan where? Like where
Utah?
they got beat by
Chicago?
Jordan in what in what round of competition? Where did they lose to Jordan to in
Oh, the finals.
the finals?
Okay.
Karl Malone was able to win what?
Yeah.
MVP? Two things that Michael Jordan directly stopped Patrick Ewing from doing, reaching the finals and probably winning an MVP from dominating the Eastern Conference. Sometimes, like the Knicks were unfortunate to catch the Bulls in the second round instead of the Eastern Conference Finals and not even make a deep playoff run because of it. When if you remove them, that same team probably ends up contending for finals, maybe even takes home a championship. But, at least the Jazz, it was a little bit more success, but at least the Jazz got to the top of the mountain. They didn't stamp their flag in the ground, but they at least got to the top of the mountain. The Bulls stopped Patrick Ewing, or Michael Jordan stopped Patrick Ewing from getting to it countless amount of times.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. So this was our social media distancing question of the week. And what that means is you as the viewing audience have to go let us know who won this argument between James or Max. So are you taking the Jazz side in terms of whether Michael Jordan stopped the Jazz from being more successful, or Patrick Ewing's side?
Patty Ewing, man,
he held both of these players.
He definitely held both of them. Literally
held them down so much. It's actually kind of unfair to think about, but then at the same time, it's not really his fault. You know what I mean? He was just better. So you vote either through the comments. You comment down on our comment section on Facebook or on YouTube, or you go on our Instagram or Twitter polls and you vote. Whoever loses is going to have to do a punishment that you have to tune back in next week and find out what it is, because it's going to be good. The last one was a TikTok video. If you haven't checked it out.
I killed it. If you
haven't checked it out, you got to go check it out, because honestly, we thought it was going to be a punishment, and JJ might have turned.
I had way too much fun with this. So jokes on you all. I had way too much fun with it.
Yeah, way too much fun. Honestly, that's a very good way to take it. Personally, I want to weigh in real quick, because Max, I think you'll appreciate this. Michael Jordan held Charles Barkley back so much.
Yeah, Sir Charles got hurt.
Yeah.
Honestly, I literally, growing up, I only viewed Charles Barkley as kind of comedic relief, because I'm 24 years old. I obviously didn't see any of this. I've had the fortune of going back and actually watching Charles Barkley highlights.
God, absolute beast.
I've never seen anything like this man.
Absolute beast.
It's honestly unbelievable.
Chuck got to a finals. Chuck got an MVP.
He did.
Ewing didn't get any of it.
To me, I'm going to die on the hill that if Michael Jordan did not exist, Charles Barkley would have been the most dominant player of that era, and therefore of all time for the NBA, because that is what everybody considers to be the most dominant era of basketball ever.
You know
that's personally the hill that I'm willing to die on. If you guys are one of the ones that stabs me, that's perfectly fine. I'll accept that, because I love you guys, and that's just what it is. So we got to transfer from social media distancing question into we changed it from quarantine questions, mainly because of just how well done The Last Dance was.
It was absolutely spectacular.
As a filmmaker, the guys who did this, I know MJ was all behind it, but the film crew and the producers, the executive producers on this, did an absolutely masterful job making this documentary. So what we're going to be doing from now until whenever the documentary, the docuseries runs out, I'm not sure how many episodes is it, guys?
It's 10 parts. 5 weeks, 2 episodes a week, 10 episodes.
So 5 weeks. So for 5 weeks, what we're going to be doing is every Monday, we're going to be breaking down those 2 episodes of The Last Dance. And I know I'm not going to miss it. I encourage you guys not to miss it as well.
Absolutely not.
No, it literally some of the best television that's gone on in a while. So we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to break down The Last Dance episodes 1 and 2. This is going to be a very divisive question, mainly because GMs are a very polarizing topic. But the first question is going to be, after the first 2 episodes, are you going to call Jerry Krause a good or a bad GM? JJ, we'll start with you.
Every filmmaker and every executive producer and Michael Jordan himself would want us to say Jerry Krause is a bad GM. That's clearly how they wanted to paint him in this docuseries. And they didn't have to try that hard. I mean, I wasn't alive for back then, but I've only heard Jerry Krause's name spoken a couple of times, and not many good things happen after you say Jerry Krause's name, especially from old heads who watched what he did to the Bulls organization back then. But let's keep it real. Jerry Krause, the person, not the greatest. Jerry Krause, the GM, needs to get credit for the team he put together for 6 straight championships. I mean, that was him. He went to Central Arkansas State to find some guy named Scottie Pippen and trade up in the draft to go get him. And quickly, that guy became the second best player in the league next to the guy he already drafted who, was the best player in the league and became the best player of all time. He went out and got Phil Jackson. He went and made the trade for Dennis Rodman. This is Jerry Krause that made all these moves happen and put together what people still consider is the best team in NBA history. So, yes, his ego got put in the way and didn't allow them maybe to see, just how much success they could have in the end in the long term. But I mean, Jerry Krause, the GM, let's give him his roses. He was 2-time GM of the year. He got accolades that backed it up. Jerry Krause was a good GM. Bad person, good GM.
R.I.P. Jerry Krause, by the way.
R.I.P. the late great Jerry Krause. Yeah.
Yes, Max, what do you think?
Honestly, I don't really have too much to add on to what JJ said. I think he nailed it pretty much perfectly. Great, but not perfect GM. I think anybody that can organically construct a roster that is able to win 3 titles in a row, I don't think there's any way you can call them anything but a great or less GM, right? Like, I just don't see it. He inherited Michael Jordan, but other than that, he did everything right in knowing that, A, Scottie Pippen was going to be one of the best players in the league and getting him to Chicago, and B, everything else didn't matter as long as you had pieces that complemented Michael Jordan. And hey, honestly, sometimes it's better to just not overcomplicate things, right? Like, hell, I wish we did this with the Sixers. Joel, Ben Simmons, 9 other shooters who could host.
Players who compliment him. Look, Jerry Krause made the hardest decision in his career and took Charles Oakley away from the Bulls because other pieces fit better. And Michael Jordan said it himself. He said that was the toughest thing to do. But for what we needed, Charles Oakley wasn't the best option, for us. He said it literally. We had a better chance to win once Oak left. We got players that fit our team better. Charles Oakley by himself is probably better than 99% of the people that were on the Bulls team. But for what the Bulls needed, Charles Oakley wasn't it. Jerry Krause saw it, and he was not afraid to pull triggers, man. I think so many GMs are afraid to pull that trigger because of what it might seem or what other players might think. If Jerry Krause knew something in his mind, he wasn't afraid to go pursue it. I mean, for better or for worse, that's a good GM. It makes him a good GM.
Yeah,
agreed. I think it's very obvious that the way he handled the fall of that dynasty could have been better, to say the least.
Does anyone handle falls of dynasties well? Like that's like the definition of a fall of a dynasty. Like nothing gets handled well.
No, you guys definitely hit it on the head. Great GM, honestly, really great GM by the moves he made, the players he found. The person, not so much. Severely.
The person need to get work done a little bit.
The person needed a little bit of work. And I say little bit of work, meaning the little man syndrome, which definitely influenced his the ego-based destroying of literally the best team in NBA history, mainly because he was getting bullied. Which again,
they were bullying him bad. Even
I'm not
getting bullied.
I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying they should have done that, but it's a little bit like you're their boss. Kind of step up and make it not so you're not doing this out of ego. Right. I'm not saying they're right for bullying him. That's some of the stuff that was said was I think like Paxson said, it was eyebrow raising. It was quite wild. But another reason that I think the person was a little bit bad, will lead us into the next question, was criminally undervaluing the player that you brought up, James, the guy who he scouted out of Central Arkansas. It's literally criminally undervaluing this guy and knowing that he needed the money to help out in his personal life. That just doesn't sit well with me. You know what I mean? You're the GM, you have the position of power, and you're going to offer Scottie friggin' Pippen, 7 years, $18 million. That's rough.
Yeah, that's right. That's rough. Oh. That's $2.5 million a year. That's rough.
That blows my dude. The 122nd highest paid player in the NBA. And that's
talent wise was the second best player in the NBA at that time.
Exactly. Like that's our next question. Like I know both of your takes on this, but give me your takes. This is one of those questions that needs to be asked. Like you said earlier in the episode, it has the answer, but it needs to be asked. What are your takes on this absurd contract for Scottie Pippen, Max?
So I'll say this. I think he had a lot of factors working against him, right? Like the childhood situation, dad and brother both in wheelchairs, horrible situation to be in. That is so it's beyond, for me personally, I can't even imagine having to deal with that, with one person that you have, like people that need that kind of attention, that requires a lot of effort from those around them. It takes a village kind of in a sense. Having to do that times two, I couldn't even imagine the kind of struggles that go on in that house, especially as a family of 5 or 6 and having to deal with all that, especially that poor mother having to deal with 4 kids and not really having a husband to help so much. So I understand where he was coming from. This was also a couple years before the NBA had like one of its biggest jumps in terms of revenue that the league was pulling in. Like the TV deals in the 90s were crazy larger than the ones in the 80s.
Unexpected. Put the caveat in there. Unexpected. The league did not expect that jump to happen like that in revenue.
I think regardless, even in the context of the league state when he signed, I think that was still a criminally undervalued contract in terms of length and money given. But then after a couple years, after he has 2 or 3 rings, I forget what year that TV deal went into effect, but by that point he has at least 2 rings and any other personal accolades that he's accumulated over those first 2 or 3 championship seasons. At that point, I know they said, look, once you sign this contract, don't come back. But if you're a good ownership, you got to know that a guy who's contributed that much, you got to give him more. You got to, or else it's going to end like that. There's no –
How are you going to tell somebody you can't renegotiate a contract?
Exactly. I thought that in and of itself was preposterous.
Yeah, but whether it's right or wrong, they looked Scottie Pippen. They didn't like have him sign the contract and internally know that we're not going to renegotiate. That's the deal he signed. They straight up told Scottie Pippen to his face something not a lot of people want to admit, not a lot of people want to hear it. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be the bad guy on this question. They told him straight up, once you sign this deal, you cannot renegotiate. And because Jerry Krause said that, Jerry Seinberg looked him in his eye.
Jerry Krause didn't say that.
Jerry Krause said you can't renegotiate. Jerry Seinberg said, do not sign it. Look at this contract. Look at the player you are. The money, $18 million is not the problem. It's the years. It's the amount of time that's locked in for. 7 years is the problem. You signed 3 years, 18 mil at that time. Scotty, good deal. We'll talk to you in 3 years. But ownership straight up told him, this is a bad contract for you. Do not sign it. And Scotty took both of those statements, we're not going to renegotiate and don't sign it, and put pen to paper anyway. That was Scotty's decision. I get it. He had family situations. He had stuff at home that he felt he needed to sign a contract right now. He didn't have too much time to sit there and negotiate and go back and forth. And his family validated that and said, yes, he made sure he took care of our family. I get all of that. But you have 2 businessmen looking at you, one saying, I have a bad contract for you to sign and letting you know you can't renegotiate it. And then his boss, the owner of your organization, saying, Scotty, you really shouldn't sign this, man. This is devaluing you. You're not going to like this contract in 3 years. In 3 years, $18 million for your position is going to be 122nd, and you're not going to like it. But he did it anyway. Like he signed that contract anyway. And you got to remember, that documentary mainly takes place in the 97 season. Scottie Pippen signed that contract in 91 after his rookie deal. He was the second best player on the Bulls, but he wasn't Scottie Pippen yet. He didn't get that until they won their first ring. So, yes, it would still undervalue him, but it wasn't criminal like it was in 97. At the end of the 7 years, then it was criminal. But it blew my mind because it took Scottie till the 97 season to start raising hell about it. Scotty, this contract was bad for you when you signed it. If you were going to have gripes about it, you should have had gripes about it from 91 till 97.
I want to disagree with you, man. I just think it's bad faith. Like to me, like you're the guy, Jerry Krause, the guy who drafted you from Central Arkansas. What was it, 5th overall or 3rd overall? 5th overall. It's like you have so much more trust in the GM because he's the guy who travels on the bus with you. He's the guy who drafted you. He's the guy who deals with your agent, all that. Like ownership is that big, scary guy that you really don't want to hear from, because if you do, it's bad. You know what I mean? So, like, it's grain of salt with the ownership. If you're hearing a different thing from the GM, it's kind of like, all right, well, Jerry wouldn't do me wrong. You know what I mean? So to me, it's just bad faith on Jerry Krause's part in just criminally undervaluing this guy that you like claim to think so highly of. So
but the NBA is a business, and everyone knows that. And I think from a GM standpoint, yes, I like this player. Yes, I want to lock him in and make sure he's a part of my organization. But I'm going to do it from the standpoint of what's the best for my organization. If I can keep as much money as possible in my organization's pocket, I'm going to do it. Yep. If he's willing to sign a 7-year, $18 million contract, guess what? I'm going to put a 7-year, $18 million contract in front of his face. Like,
I don't disagree with you, but foresight, because of that, literally led to this whole thing where Scottie Pippen could have had surgery and been ready for the 97 season. And he said, nah, fuck it. I'm not going to mess up my summer. Mm-hmm. I'm going to screw over this guy. You screwed over the player, so the player comes back and screws you over.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying originally. Like, think about it like this, right? He signs that deal in '91, right? Like, at the time, he's totally cool with that, right? When he signs that piece of paper, in his mind, he's like, yep, this is the deal that I am cool with. Regardless if it's the best deal he could have got, he is at least content with it.
Dude, he's 20-something-year-old, and you offer him $2.5 million a year?
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. I think at the time, he doesn't have too much leg to stand on, but by the time that contract's a couple years in, yeah. Honestly, I think the best way to summarize it is this. There's a lot of I don't know how to put it. Each party involved misplayed their hand, right? Mm-hmm. Scottie Pippen did not get nearly as much annual average value as he should have. Jerry Krause should have never offered him that contract knowing what he was capable of and the player that he was becoming into after his rookie year. At least not for that long. He could have offered him a better deal. Ownership, yeah, he said, don't take this deal, Scotty, but did he ever do anything in actually preventing that from happening? No, you're the owner. If you really don't want this guy to sign this deal, you tell Jerry Krause, who is your employee, you take that deal off the table, you're ripping this kid off.
Yep.
I don't think I think there is mishaps by all of the sides, whether it be intentional, not being naive, like in Pippen's case, whatever it may be. But I think we can agree that between all parties involved, things went awry multiple places.
Yes. So contracts were. Would it be fair to say that money was probably the number one downfall of the Bulls? Is that
money and ego? But I think money feeds into ego and vice versa. So yeah,
very fair.
So I think it's just natural. Like, you spend a decade straight with the same core of guys, and you start
to wonder what else is out there, what's different. Like, you look at, you're exactly right, Max. You know what I mean? You spend it's a very long-term relationship, and you start to look at other things. You're like, I wonder how good it would be if that person was here, or if that person was here, or if you're Jerry Krause's point of view, you got everybody saying, "Oh my God, this wouldn't have happened if we don't have Michael, Scotty, Dennis, and Phil." And Jerry Krause is like, I get no credit. Watch me do it with somebody else. Now, he never did. He never really got close. But, to his credit, he was saying, where's my credit? Where's my just due? So since I'm not getting it, I can prove that, it was me who built this team. Watch me build another one.
You're right. You're right. So that's kind of why I asked the question was money the downfall of the Bulls? Because contracts seem to be a very big sticking point for a lot of players on the Bulls, and not just players. You know what I mean? The contract for Phil Jackson was up.
Yeah.
They offered him a 1-year, $6 million deal to come back and coach this Bulls team, and literally told him, this is it. Like, you're not coming back. Like, we're over you. You're done. Here's this. Come get us another ring. Thanks for it. We'll see you later. So, like, that, to me, that blows my mind. But that kind of begs the question: did they just give up on winning how many more rings? Could we be talking about Michael Jordan having 8, 9, 10 rings? Like, James, what do you think?
Yeah. That simple answer is yes. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't see any way where if that team comes back, if Phil Jackson comes back, Michael Jordan comes back. If Michael Jordan comes back, at least Dennis Rodman comes back. Scottie Pippen might still be on his way out the door because the writing was on the wall for him anyway. His dispute didn't have anything to do really with Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson. But you know, even in that vein, I look at that makeup and I'm like, yes, you have the greatest coach of all time.
I'm not gonna get over that one.
That fit too perfectly.
That was good.
R.I.P. to the second best MJ, or another great MJ. But I look at that and I say, you bring the best coach in the NBA, probably the best basketball coach of all time, back to that team, and I gotta think that if you pair him and Michael Jordan back up, that we're gonna have more rings, at least a shot at more rings, right? The saying leaving rings on the table doesn't mean they were for sure yours. It just means you had a shot to go grab them and you didn't try. And I think that's exactly what happened when they let Phil Jackson go, is they left that shot of actually contending for rings on the table. And, I'm not sure if there's any real way you can justify it if you're Jerry Krause as to why you had to say this was Phil's last year. I heard the argument that Jerry Krause didn't want to wait for it to get ugly, as you were kind of alluding to, Max, didn't want to wait for the end of the dynasty to happen. He want to try to get out in front of it and maybe leave this illusion that it could have been better, which is better than look at how bad it got. You know what I mean? So I hear that argument, but it doesn't make sense. Like, to me, if you have the chance to do it, I have the best coach in the league wanting to come back to my organization. Why kick him out the door? He didn't do anything wrong. Like, Phil Jackson didn't do anything to anybody to warrant being kicked out the door. Is just, we don't want you back next season. That's it. The statement that he said, you could win 82 games in a row and it won't matter, absolutely blew my mind. Like, literally telling him there's nothing you can do.
That's just Krause thinking he's not getting enough attention. All I'm going to say is this. I think there's no way you can spin it any other way. Is there's definitely a shot that the Bulls continue their title-winning dominance with Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson minimum. I mean, really, that's really all you needed for at least a shot, right? But the crazy thing and the great thing about sports is that until it happens, you'll never know. Right. So for now, all we'll have is the memories of those Bulls and what could have been if things just never hit the fan.
And that's the beautiful, that's the beautiful, hardness of this whole thing, isn't it, Max? And I think it was almost what Jerry Krause wanted. I'd rather have the memories of good being the last thing than the memories of it falling apart be the last thing. So
yep.
Maybe he was trying to preserve something. Who knows?
I had like a similar answer to this question, like it kind of just organically because of watching the docuseries. And then I just left ESPN on the background after the documentary last night, which actually turned out to be really cool because the Scott Van Pelt show came on afterwards with Jay Adonde, Jack McMullen, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name. He looks like the Monopoly Man. He was a Chicago beat writer at the time, acclaimed award-winning writer. It kills me that I can't remember his name, but he brought up something really interesting about Phil Jackson. His parents were Episcopal preachers. So 7 was a very prominent number in his life. So he lived his life by the rule of 7. So he literally, I don't even know if this question is a question because he was out. Like Phil Jackson was like, yeah, not only do I need a break, like I've just been through this gauntlet with this team for year after year after year after year, but like maybe the team needs a break from me. You know what I mean? Which is actually kind of a refreshing take to hear from a coach. I don't know if Phil would have come back. Like, is that too far out of the realm of possibility, guys?
No, I mean, to me, James, you're sense making, and that's what you have to do when something like this happens because you don't know. Like, you have to this is such a crazy thing that happened that you're almost left to look at clues like that to try to make it make sense, right? This is, I guess, why it had to happen. This is why the universe worked the way it did. So, and that's actually backed up by like actual facts about him and his family. Like that's hard to dispute. So.
Does that make a little bit more sense as to why he wasn't like so?
But he didn't push back. He said it himself. Yeah. Jerry Krause told me that.
If you go into work tomorrow and your boss tells you that you can do everything above and beyond right and be the perfect employee, 1 year from tomorrow you're going to be fired. Doesn't that elicit like a stronger reaction?
Yeah, like I'm probably going to push back a little bit.
Wouldn't you be like? I'm kicking over the water cooler on my way out, dog. Like, no, like, forget that. No.
And even to your point, He was opposite. He didn't get mad about it. He embraced it. Okay, this is my last year. So we're gonna create a whole mantra for it called The Last Dance. We're gonna celebrate every game as if it's the last game we're gonna play. Like he turned it on its head.
Laminated binders for the whole team and said, "Yo, this is the last dance."
That's pretty fire.
Like what? Wait, what? You're that cool about being fired? Like. Shit,
that happens when you have 5 rings as a coach and 2 rings as a player. That's what you get.
You're right. I mean, then he went on. He took a break. He went to the Lakers. Did what?
Won 5 more.
It ain't nothing but a thing. So that concludes our breakdown of this week's 2 episodes. The first 2 episodes of The Last Dance. I'm super
absolutely incredible.
9:00 on Sundays, guys. Is that
9:00 on Sunday? The Dennis Rodman episode.
We're showing the Pistons. I think next week's going to be all about the bad boys years.
I think I think 3 is Dennis Rodman and 4 is Pistons. I think it's
they go together.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say, JJ. I am so excited for this Dennis Rodman episode.
It's going to be the best episode.
It's
got to be. It's going to be the best episode of the series, the Dennis Rodman episode.
I've always wanted to hear what Michael Jordan's opinion was of Dennis Rodman doing it.
I can't wait. Because, the Dennis Rodman 30 for 30 gives you a little bit of insight into it, but never from Michael Jordan's point of view. Like, Michael Jordan.
I really want to hear what MJ's attitude was and thoughts were when he walked in the locker room and saw a wedding dress in the locker. Like,
I have a feeling we're going to find out. I'm pumped.
I can't wait.
It's going to be absolutely awesome. But that wraps it up. Join us next week. We're going to be breaking down every 2 episodes as they come out for the next 5 weeks. 10-part docuseries called The Last Dance. Michael Jordan's Last Dance, the 97-98 Bulls. We're super excited about it. But we're going to move into tap outs, guys. That's as we wrap up the show. So who wants to go first?
I'll do it before this light in my sunroom.
Let's do it.
Run up and get it. But with this Last Dance coming out, a lot of people, have been taking to social media and have been requesting for people to stop debating whether Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the list goes on, is the best player of all time. They've been asking, please don't debate anymore. Let's just appreciate greatness. And I have a little bit of a problem, with that and asking us not to debate who the greatest player of all time is. One, that's what we're doing is when we're debating who the best is, we're debating their greatness. We are appreciating their greatness because when you have this conversation, you have no choice but to say whoever it is you think is best, you have no choice but to say and be admirable of the other 2 people that you're talking about. I'm not debating, who's better and who's bad. I'm debating who's the greatest among greats. Like, to me, that's the ultimate appreciation for their greatness is saying who got to the top of that mountain. And I would love to sit each of these people down in a room and say to them, we're never going to try to debate who's the best. We're never going to try to make an argument for you being the best of all time. We're just going to sit here and appreciate how great you were, Michael, LeBron, Kobe. All of them would look at you and probably smack you because the reason they got into basketball wasn't just so people can appreciate them. I just want people to remember me being great. No, they got into basketball to be the greatest player of all time. And that's what we're debating. That's what we're trying to prove when we take these sides. If I'm saying LeBron James is the greatest of all time, or if I'm saying Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time, that doesn't mean I'm saying the other is bad. That doesn't mean I'm saying I don't like the other person. So I'm saying that this person I think was the greatest to pick up a basketball. That's what he set out to do. So if anything, all I'm doing is complimenting him. That's what he strived to do. I'm saying he achieved that. Congratulations, whoever I think this is. So yes, I think there is something to be said as to when you are watching this Jordan documentary, make sure you are appreciative of Michael Jordan and what he was able to do. And this isn't a time for you to bring in other people to try to diminish his greatness. But if you're going to ask me to never debate who the greatest player of all time is, that's just unfair and unrealistic to me. That's what they set out to do. And that's what I'll continue to do as long as I watch basketball. This is
sports. That's sports
Very
in a
well
nutshell.
You mean?
We argue things. We debate things.
Very well said. Max, what you got?
Honestly, I don't have much. All I'm going to say is boy got a little promotion at work.
Yeah.
In quarantine?
Yeah, they're in quarantine. Right? That's what I'm saying. So Look, if there's something you're
Congratulations,
working
man.
towards right now, don't let the circumstances around you bring you down negatively. You can still achieve it. So
Facts that, man. Congratulations, Digits. That's
Very
awesome.
well done.
thank you, boys. Appreciate it.
We're happy for you, Max.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, man. I got a little two-parter. So the first one is the federal government and state government has now released unemployment for people who consider themselves self-employed or 1099 contractors. So if you fall under that category, go out to the pa.gov website, file that, because I know it's been hard. You don't have a lot of the answers to the questions that they ask you for just general unemployment. They have finally decided to help us out. So if that applies to you, again, pa.gov, go out, file that, get any assistance that you might need in these trying times, because it's hitting us all. So anything that the government can do for you, go and get it. And then second, you might notice that there's a face missing from this menagerie of people. Our longtime host, Sean Northgrave, has decided to undertake some bigger and better things in his life. So we just want to say thank you for all his time here. Hopefully he sees this. If he doesn't, we miss you, man. It's been great.
Thank you for everything.
You did an awesome job. So we're just going to try and pick up where you left off. But other than that, that is this week's of Trust the Process recorded version, not live. Hopefully we'll be back to you live in a couple of weeks. Hopefully, you know what I mean? But Trust the Process recorded, brought to you by Philly, where something's always new and everything's always Philly. Everything's always Philly. Hey, have a good night, Philadelphia. We'll see you next week. And don't forget to vote on our social by leaving a comment down here in Facebook or on YouTube, or going on our Twitter and Instagram polls to find out which one of these two gentlemen has to do a quote-unquote punishment, because we're not too sure anymore. Thanks, guys. It's been a great night.
Have a good one.
Hey, everyone.